Years ago, the cruel way that some of New Mexico's animal shelters were euthanizing dogs and cats pushed the state lawmakers to crack down with a big new state board full of experts.
They were supposed to come up with uniform rules on which animals should be put to death and how. More than a decade later, what have they done? News 13's Chris McKee found out on special assignment.
This whole issue of euthanasia in the state was such a problem.
They're horror stories about what New Mexico's animal shelters did to control pet populations. A dog found alive in a shelter's freezer after a botched lethal injection. Kittens choked to death with animal control sticks.
The kitten that I saw killed, it took 4 minutes for her to die.
Until 2009, euthanasia in New Mexico's shelters was essentially lawless.
There was nothing in place. There was absolutely no oversight whatsoever.
No standards and no rules on how to humanely euthanize shelter animals.
There were literally cases where shelter staffs were taking catch poles like the dog catcher has and breaking the necks of kittens and puppies to euthanize them. And that's what was going on in our state back then.
Those stories inspired people like Peggy Weigel to act.
Yeah, good boy.
She's the now retired former director of the shelter Animal Humane New Mexico in Albuquerque. But for 6 years, she also helped guide state policy as part of New Mexico's Animal Sheltering Board.
These changes are long overdue.
Governor Bill Richardson created the volunteer board in 2005. Its goal? To tackle the expensive issue of animal overpopulation on multiple fronts. First, by setting standards for how to put down shelter animals, and to make sure shelter employees performing euthanasia were trained and licensed.
At that time, there were still communities that were gassing animals. They were putting them in gas chambers to kill them.
In 2009, New Mexico shelters stopped using gas chambers. The Animal Sheltering Board published new euthanasia rules that are still used and created the state's euthanasia licensing program.
This was a big, big step forward for the state, for the animals of our state, and for the people that still have to euthanize pets.
But that success, Weigel says, was handcuffed.
And I really feel in many respects that our board, was in a no-win situation.
With a slim budget, no way to raise money, and no way to charge shelters enough to cover the board's costs,
we were not self-funding.
Weigel says the board hit a financial brick wall.
I would agree that we were hamstrung by funding, or lack thereof.
The lack of state support quickly caught up. First, an animal shelter inspector was never hired, so even today, there's no way to tell if anyone's following the state's euthanasia rules.
The state really bears responsibility, and the legislature bears responsibility for never having funded that job.
Then the board was tasked with making guidelines on how to run a shelter.
There's 22 pages of shelter guidelines.
But the state treated that work as merely a suggestion.
The board was not authorized and still is not authorized to actually enforce any of these recommendations.
Lastly, the board was asked to create a statewide low-cost spay and neuter program, the most basic way to bring down kill rates at shelters.
When you invest in spay-neuter programs, you are reducing the cost to the state.
A 2012 study shows pet overpopulation costs New Mexico $27 million a year. But since 2014, the state has only spent about $100,000 on spay and neuter programs, reaching only about 2,000 dogs and cats. It's estimated about 70,000 dogs and cats are euthanized in New Mexico each year.
I just didn't see a way forward.
Weigel eventually left the board. The state seems to have written it off as well.
The Animal Sheltering Board is supposed to have 9 members for a full board, but for the last several years, the board has only had 3 to 4 members.
And their last meeting was nearly a year ago. Today, their budget is a mere $26,000.
Has this board been a waste of time and money?
I do not believe it's been a waste of time and money.
A Santa Fe County Democrat, State Rep Carl Trujillo, acknowledges it's time for a change, though. He passed a bill this year to change the Animal Sheltering Board's setup.
I think they achieved a tremendous amount for the resources that they had.
Next year, the Sheltering Board will become a committee of 5 reporting suggestions to the New Mexico Veterinary Board, which has a sustainable budget and should be able to finally enforce the state's animal euthanasia rules. Trujillo is hopeful the new affiliation will put the state in a position to make meaningful changes at animal shelters and ramp up the low-cost spay and neuter programs.
This is a real problem.
As for Peggy,
Over. Yeah, good boy.
she's hopeful but cautious too.
Do you think they have a chance to be more effective?
Well, I think that if you think about the veterinary board, they're private practice veterinarians. Their goal in life is not to raise money for spay-neuter. However, I do think they can have some impact by influencing their legislators. And that is the best way to move forward.
On special assignment, Chris McKee, KRQE News 13.
Lawmakers failed to pass a bill this year to make a dedicated $800,000 a year fund for more spay and neuter programs. It would have hiked a state fee on pet food manufacturers, costing pet owners a couple extra bucks a year. We've posted a full look at the state's euthanasia rules and shelter regulations in our KRQE News app.